Dan RadioStyle, hope everybody out there is having themselves a great day. Got another great Neville nugget, a Goddard goodie to share with everybody. Changing your world with childlike simplicity. Really, truly what it is. The name of the chapter is Power of Assumption, and of course this is off the Power of Awareness. There's a lot of power going on in this particular set of Goddard. But it really gets into that simplicity that children do, and as they grow up, and oftentimes with the help of adults around them, they get out of the practice of doing something that's very natural, very beneficial, and certainly the easiest way to change your life. Now, this whole chapter really focuses a lot on consciousness, so of course we've been doing a lot of discussions on consciousness. I did a live show recently on the 6 levels of consciousness, which I actually thought was fascinating. And almost want to kind of do a different version of the same information just to kind of get it out there. I feel like it might get seen better, but it was just very powerful. Consciousness really is where the shifting and changing occurs. Some of us understand that better than others, and I think that's really what this whole chapter or book really is dealing with when Neville's, he's talking about how we really have the power to change things, and to do that requires a slight shift in consciousness. And here is where we learn from childlike simplicity how to do that. And I'm intentionally kind of leaving that a little vague, so please come with me on this journey. This is going to really, for anybody that's out there trying to figure out how can I get better at manifesting, how can I manifest faster, how can I get myself to more money, more wealth, better job, specific person, whatever. Manifesting's manifesting as far as I'm concerned, right? What are you trying to do? Let's see the tricks on how to make that happen. So man's chief delusion is his conviction that there are causes other than his own state of consciousness. All that befalls a man, all that is done by him, all that comes from him, happens as a result of his state of consciousness. A man's consciousness is all that he thinks and desires and loves, all that he believes is true and consents to. That is why a change of consciousness is necessary before you can change your outer world. Rain falls as a result of change in the temperature in the higher regions of the atmosphere. So, in like manner, a change of circumstance happens as a result of a change in your state of consciousness. Now, the first sentence is powerful. Man's chief delusion is his conviction that there are causes other than his own state of consciousness. Right off the bat, Goddard's asking us to kind of accept a primal truth, that our consciousness is really what does the creating. Our consciousness is what needs to shift if you want something in your outer world to shift. As we frequently say, what's going on inside of you is going to become outside of you. So you start there. You want to fix the outside, you start to adjust the inside. Be ye transformed by the renewing of your mind. To be transformed, the whole basis of your thoughts must change. But your thoughts cannot change unless you have new ideas. For you think from your ideas. All transformation begins with an intense, burning desire to be transformed. The first step in this renewing of the mind is desire. You must want to be different and intend to be before you can begin to change yourself. Let me say that again. You must want to be different and intend to be. You must have an intention to be different, to change, before you can ever begin to change yourself. You can't just expect to change just naturally if you don't have some sort of reason or understanding inside of yourself that, I think change is needed. So it's got to come from you. Then you must make your future dream a present fact. You do this by assuming the feeling of your wish fulfilled. Very popular statement that Goddard uses frequently, and the power of assumption is really what he's talking about. You do this by assuming the feeling of your wish fulfilled. But by desiring to be other than you are, you can create an ideal person you want to be and assume that you are already that person. If this assumption is persisted in until it becomes your dominant feeling, the attainment of your ideal is inevitable. That last sentence is kind of key. Essentially, I'll read the sentence. If this assumption is persisted in until it becomes your dominant feeling, the attainment of your ideal is inevitable, which means when you keep thinking about this consciousness, when you keep thinking about this version of yourself, and it becomes to a point where you understand it and it is so real, then success is inevitable. There's no way to fail when this becomes your reality, your inner consciousness. I am this way. I am more abundant. I am more secure. I am more wealthy. I'm coming across as more intelligent to the people that need me to be. Like, The very nature of focusing on how, like, people keep thinking I'm stupid when I talk to them. All right, that's the start of it, right? So I need to change that. By changing that, I've already had the intention now that I need to change it. So now I start to become open to anything, on top of the fact that now I'm starting to realize, hey, when you open your mouth, make sure you know what you're talking about. Maybe stop talking about things you don't know about. Maybe stop talking about things that are controversial. Like, you start to learn there's better ways to play this game and accomplish what you're out to accomplish, right? So it's really all about starting to shift the way things are. The ideal you hope to achieve is always ready for an incarnation, but unless you yourself offer it human parentage, it is incapable of birth. Therefore, your attitude should be one in which, having desired to express a higher state, you alone accept the task of incarnating this new great value of yourself. The only way this can come to fruition is through you. Is through you parenting it like it's a child, right? Like we're trying to bring a child up and teach it this new world. That's really what this consciousness shifting is all about. It's, one, looking at the world through different eyes, like a child frequently, right? Children ask all sorts of crazy questions that are awesome. It's just like, wow, I didn't even think about that. That's a really neat way to ask that. But on top of that, it needs to come from you. You need to give birth to this new you, this new person. You've got to allow it to come forth. And you do that through thoughts. You do that through what you're focusing on now. You do that through the intention of being different and changing and growing. Through this process, things start to happen around you. Things pop up. Little situations arise. It starts to become a self-fulfilling prophecy just by the intention of trying to create change. Just by the intention of trying to be different. That starts it. That starts the ball rolling. In giving birth to your ideal, you must bear in mind that the methods of mental and spiritual knowledge are entirely different. This is kind of a cool thing that I really enjoyed. The difference between mental and spiritual knowledge. Now, one thing he mentions here, and I probably don't disagree, this is a point that is truly understood by probably not more than one person in a million. It's a pretty solid piece of understanding that not a lot of people get. A lot of people kind of think, just by understanding something from a information standpoint, by having some knowledge, that they truly understand that thing, that they've got wisdom. And spiritual knowledge to me and wisdom are kind of similar, I think anyway, or at least in my mind, right? So having knowledge because I've read a book and I understand it conceptually is one thing. To be able to live that knowledge, to be able to be that knowledge, to be able to come from that knowledge and use it in our outer world, that's where wisdom starts to come into play. So you can know something from the outside. I can look at a box and go, well, it's a box. It's gray. It's this color. I just said the color, right? It's got a lid on it and a bow around it and blah, 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 right? It's a wonderful box, 3 dimensions, 3 by 3 by 3, whatever. But truly opening the box, seeing what's in the box, being inside the box. Like, the box is a lot more than just this outer shell that we can see. And it's a bad analogy, but still, by getting inside of the box, by being the box, you learn so much more about it. So you know a thing mentally by looking at it from the outside, by comparing it with other things, by analyzing it and defining it, by thinking of it, essentially. Whereas you can know a thing spiritually only by becoming it, only by thinking from it. That is when you're truly being something. That is when you're using wisdom. That is when you're using your spiritual knowledge. When you are acting as if you are that thing already, is what he's saying. You're creating this reality within yourself, and you're being from that reality, and that starts to affect your outer reality. You must be thinking, you must be the thing itself, and not merely talk about it or look at it. You must be like the moth in search of his idol, the flame, right? You must be looking to bring this about. You must, instead of just looking at it and talking about it and having a picture on your vision board, you need to be it. You need to become it. You need to be this individual that's already with their specific person. You need to be this individual that they're looking for at this job. You need to be this individual who's got more security, who's making more money. You need to be that person before that person actually sort of pops out of you. And that's really confusing to a lot of people, the idea of being something that you're not already, or the idea of being something that you don't fully understand, right? You might have some knowledge about it. You might have some what do they call it? Some mental knowledge about this thing, and that's great. But the spiritual knowledge is where the growth and creation comes from. So mental knowledge is knowing it. Like I know to have more money, I should be making more money. I should be probably working at a better job. I'll probably end up working or living in a new place. Probably have a new car in the process, right? So we start to mentally wrap our heads around what's going to happen. Then we sink ourselves into that imaginal scene, and we start to imagine what is it like to be wealthier, to be driving around in a nicer car, to be living in a nicer neighborhood, to be pulling up to that dream job that I want, to actually see the significant jump in my paycheck. Maybe you're making $1,000 a month or $5,000 a month right now. Well, maybe imagine, well, what would my life be like if I was making $8,000 a month, $10,000 a month? What starts to change in my life? What's different? What am I doing differently? How am I feeling? You start to get into the wisdom or the spiritual knowledge of what it is that you're trying to create. Therefore, it is at the height of folly to expect the incarnation of a new and greater concept of self to come about by natural evolutionary process. That which is required a state of consciousness to produce its effect obviously cannot be effected without such a state of consciousness. And in your ability to assume the feeling of a greater life, to assume a new concept of yourself, you possess what the rest of nature does not possess: imagination, the instrument by which you create the world. Kind of one of the things that also is our understanding that we are a part of everything, and yet we're still sort of separate from everything. That's where the imagination is such an impressive piece of help for us. It's what children do, right? Children play make-believe. Children aren't playing doctor, or children are playing house. Other than the fact that this child has a mom and dad, they have no idea what it's like to be a parent. They have no idea what it's like to have a household. But they imagine it from the best of their abilities. They do the best job they can, and they don't question it. And they pretend that this is exactly what they are. And they live it, and they become it. And for a moment, in their minds, they are it. The purity of how a child imagines and makes up stuff and lives that made-up life is impressive. How many children, little girls, like I just think it was my niece, an image of her popped up, even though she's probably older than this now. I don't think she does these kinds of things anymore. But she used to love to wear her little fairy wings, right? Little sort of, I don't know what kind of material it was, but you could kind of see through it, and it's all glittery looking and whatever, right? You guys know what I'm talking about. But she'd wear those wings everywhere. Why? Because she was a fairy. There was two things that this niece of mine loves more than life itself: cats and fairies. She wants to be both of them all the time. In fact, I've seen her be a kitten fairy, which is very strange. And she's got wings on. It's like I am very confused. I've never seen a fairy that's a cat, and I've never seen a cat that's a fairy. But thank you, niece of mine. You've definitely just demonstrated that those things do exist. And it's so real when they do it. That's the power of manifesting. Watch a child play. If you don't know how to do this anymore, if you've forgotten how to do this, if your parents told you you were silly to do this, watch a child. Watch children play. You will be amazed what you learn from them. It is impressive. So your imagination is the instrument, the means, whereby your redemption from slavery, sickness, and poverty is effected. If you refuse to assume the responsibility of the incarnation of a new and higher concept of yourself, then you reject the means, the only means whereby your redemption, that is, the attainment of your ideal, can be effected. Meaning, your imagination is the trick, is the key to get you to your dream, to your goal, to whatever it is that you're trying to manifest. If you refuse to assume the responsibility and assume the imagination of this act, if you refuse to do that, then you pretty much give yourself no hope or option of creating that thing. Right? As he said earlier in this chapter, in order to become something, you've got to have it created within inside yourself. And the only way we can do that is imagination. Because if you don't already have $1 million in the bank, it's hard to feel like you have $1 million in the bank. Where we cross that line is when we start to imagine, what would it be like to have a lot of money? If I had a lot of, you start to think about all the things that happen in our lives where maybe Maybe I go to the store and I'm paying attention to the price of things. Maybe I'm going to the store and there's certain things I don't buy because they're more expensive. Maybe when I'm getting steak, maybe I get the New York or the flank steak or the chop steak or whatever. Maybe I get some sort of different steak rather than getting the filet or rather than getting the prime rib. Maybe I'm getting one of the lesser cuts of meat because, maybe it's $5, $6, $7 a pound less. Well, that's one avenue that changes when all of a sudden you've got a lot of money. You're in the mood for a steak. Why don't you get the finest steak? In fact, why don't you find the Wagyu beef or the grass-fed steak? Or why don't you find the one that's got no hormones? And you maybe pay an extra $2 on top of the extra $7 you're already paying. But when you go home and make that steak and eat it, it's like one of the finest pieces of meat you've ever made at your house. Why? Because you paid the extra money. How are you able to do that? Because you're making more money. You've got more income coming in. That's just one example of something that might change if your income levels were changing. Maybe it's the fact that you go out to your car and you're afraid to touch it when you're dressed in nice clothes because it's filthy, right? So maybe you're going to have a clean car. Maybe you've got one of those places at your office where they come in and wash your car once a week or whatever, and you're giving them the $40, helping them out, and on top of that, you've got a constantly clean car. That might be one of the things that starts to happen. Start imagining, what's your life going to be like? What do you want? What do you wish to experience? Start to imagine what it will be like when you have the wish fulfilled. You assume the wish fulfilled, and then you think about, how does that feel? How am I going to feel when I'm with my significant person? How am I going to feel when they're coming home and I've got dinner cooking and they're, hi, honey, come in and give me a kiss and a love? Or when I hear the garage door opening, knowing that that's them coming home. How does that feel? Do I start to get excited? Cool, they're home, yay, right? Like, what is it that it's going to be like? Imagine your reality as the wish fulfilled. Once you've got whatever it is that you're trying to create, maybe you're trying to pass classes, trying to get A's. All right, well, what's it feel like when you finally look at that? You go online and you see your grades and you see that you got an A and you see the 4.0 after it and you see that your GPA overall is like a 3.9 or something great, right? You feel like you're doing really well. I'm accomplishing this. I'm doing this. I'm pulling this off. I'm doing great. The imagination is what gets you to that place. It's what allows you to feel that. Now, some of you are asking right now, well, my imagination sucks, Dan. It sucks pretty bad, in fact. How do I get better at that? First thing, seriously, watch a kid. If you've got a child, you're stoked. You've got one at your disposal. That's a bad choice of words, but I think it's funny anyway. But you've got a child right there with you, right? You've got one that you can pay attention to, that you can watch. Your child, your loving little child. Watch them play. Give them some blocks or something, though. Don't just hand them an iPad and expect to learn something from them. That's feeding them information. That's not forcing them to use their imaginations to create things. So give them some blocks. Give them some Legos. Give them, some fairy clothes or whatever their thing is. Something that forces them to interact and make time go by. And you will be amazed at the things that kids do. And in fact, a lot of them will rejoice if you join them. So if you're not good at imagining, watch kids. Kids will teach you how to do it. Kids are experts at imagining. We're the ones that suck. And it's as we get older, we give up on this because we've been told that it's childlike. We've been told that it's not okay, that it doesn't do anything for your life, that it doesn't blah, blah, blah. Some might wonder if there's a reason why they try so hard to teach us from doing that, because it does take away the most powerful force you have available to you, your imagination. Your imagination changes everything. What you imagine becomes real. If there's something you don't like in your life, acknowledge that I need to change this, that this is going to change, that change is happening right now. I am open to change. I am creating this change. I am going to do what is necessary. And then pay attention to what's going on around you. Try to remember, and this is one thing that I think some people in law of attraction circles make mistakes on, is they think that they can law of attraction their way through things without ever having to do any sort of action on their own. I don't believe that. I don't think that's true. There might be some very crazy examples where something did just basically fall out of the sky, but for the most part, way over 90% of the time, you're going to need to do some action. That's just part of how life works, how manifestation works, how consciousness shifting works. You set an intention and you begin moving towards it. That's all. That's it. I mean, it doesn't need to be hard. It doesn't need to be difficult, but there's going to be some action. Imagination is the only redemptive power in the universe. However, your nature is such that it is optional to you whether you remain in your present concept of yourself, a hungry being longing for freedom, health, and security, or choose to become the instrument of your own redemption, imagining yourself as that which you want to be, and thereby simplifying your hunger and redeeming yourself. Goddard, I feel like there should be ringing or something, ding-a-ling-a-ling, right? Like, because Goddard is just, it's deep. So deep. But it is more than just thinking about it. It's more than just living in the wish fulfilled. It's creating this consciousness where you are the thing that you seek. You become it by imagination. It's not real at the moment. Don't worry so much about, well, I don't have it yet. Don't worry about it like that. Imagine that you have it right now. Use present tense words. Look at it like, I have this now. I'm playing with this now. This is in my hands now. Imagine it. Get yourself to feel what it feels like to be in the wish fulfilled. Once you've got the feeling nailed down, manifestation flows. It comes from the feeling. The feeling comes from the imagination. Imagine it. Imagine it to the best you can. And if today you imagine it crappily, tomorrow, try it again and see if you can hone it in a bit. That's all. Don't be frustrated. Today I can't do it. No big deal. Tomorrow you'll be able to do it better. There's a lot of things that I can't do very well right now. One, I got a great bass guitar. Played it a couple times, learned a couple songs. I don't play it enough. I don't practice like I should, which is something I'd like to do. I've got the guitar, so it's going to happen, but I can't get mad at myself for not being a bass guitar player. Come on, Dan. Give yourself a chance. You've practiced some. You've been able to play a couple songs. Yeah, just play it a little bit every day. Learn a song or two a week, month, whatever, and start working on it. And a month or two from now, I'm actually going to be like, dude, I can play like 4 or 5 different songs. I can actually play stuff, and people are like, dude, I know that song. So again, it's one of those things where, yeah, you may not be good at it now. That's okay. Give yourself a chance. Imagine yourself being better at it. And then practice, then live it, then be it. And you will find your life can change. And I've said this a bunch, but your life can change in less than 24 hours. Once you change what's going on inside of you, the outer world immediately begins to show what you've been working on. Dan, RadioStyle.